This is Carrie Johnson with the Department of Management, and this is part three of a series of brief webinars to provide an overview of the Department of Management's valuation system, and in particular, submitting data to that system, checking over that data, and working through that process each year that the county auditor or their staff need to complete. And part three is really going to talk about the type of data that is actually submitted to Department of Management and in more detail, and how you go about actually submitting the data itself. So, you will be importing data into Department of Management. This segment is going to be talking specifically about the regular total valuation file that you import, and a later segment will talk more specifically about the sub file that you submit, the new construction other additions file. Keep in mind when you import data into the Department of Management system with the taxing district names, if you don't want to override what's listed there, just make sure that your system places an X for the taxing district name. Now, when you submit data into Department of Management, you import that data. It's a DAT file, and you're going to submit for each and every taxing district that you're operating in that year. You're going to submit the 100% and taxable valuations by class. Keep in mind that you cannot have negative numbers or any produced negative numbers. You will receive an error upon trying to upload. The first column or left-hand column is going to be 100% valuation, and that is the valuation that's arrived at prior to the application of any assessment limitation to that class of value. Taxable valuation is the amount calculated after applying the statutory assessment limitation, sometimes referred to generally as rollback, as it's determined annually by the Department of Revenue. Valuations for gas and electric utilities that pay a replacement tax are not subject to an assessment limitation, but when you get those values from the Department of Revenue, you'll see both 100% value and or assessed value and taxable value. And when we talk about assessment limitations for the 2025 submission of property values, so this would be for the fiscal year 26-27 budgets, the following classes of property are subject to taxation at less than 100% of their value. So they have an assessment limitation applied to them. Ag property, so this would include ag land and buildings, is taxed at a percentage of 59.4401. Residential property is taxed at a percentage of 44.5345. And then commercial, industrial, and railroad property is taxed at a two-tier assessment limitation. So, in a given property unit, the first $150,000 of value receives an assessment limitation that is basically residential's assessment limitation, and that is the 44.5345 percentage. And then the value of each property unit that is over $150,000 is receives an assessment limitation of 90%. Utility property for the assessment year 2025 does see some assessment limitation. So, if we're talking about property that's found within Chapter 437, it receives an assessment limitation of 94.2059. Property that is covered under chapters 428 and 438 is taxed at a percentage of 98%. So just sort of keep in mind as you've received those documentations and those certifications of value from Department of Revenue, you will see assessment limitation being applied to some of that utility value that you may have. Now, as far as which chapter the properties are that you have, that's something that you'd want to review based on those certificates of assessment. So, for each and every taxing district, you're going to be indicating whether or not that taxing district is urban within a city or rural outside a city. You're going to be indicating yes or no if it's a city ag, and a city ag district is just essentially ag land, but it's within the boundaries of a city, and it has a very specific tax rate applied to it by statute. So it can only be taxed at $3 and 00375 rate per code of Iowa. So they have to have a special flag for those city ag districts. City exempt, yes or no. And if it is a city exempt district, it's a city district, but it contains value that's exempt from city taxation. And it's used when there's an agreement between a city and property owners that are coming into the city, being annexed into the city to sort of ease them into the full city rate. So a portion of their value would not have the city rate applied to it, and a portion of it would. So you may or may not have any of those in your particular county, but it is an option that you need to be aware of, and a flag that's on each and every taxing district. Schools only. A Y is used to flag a taxing district that contains value exempt from all taxation except the school levy rate. And within the instructions, there's a particular segment regarding schools only. And I also have one brief segment of this training that's specific to schools only taxing districts. They are new for the assessment year 2025. TIF, yes or no, it just indicates whether or not the taxing district is a TIF base or a TIF increment. And if it is a TIF yes, then it's going to be a base or an increment. Or if it's a TIF no, obviously it would be not applicable. The excuse me, frozen base year for our TIF base districts, B for base, you'd need to report a frozen base year. If the frozen base year hasn't been established yet, you can enter all zeros. But just remember at the point in which there is a frozen base year established, then you'd want to go ahead and enter that year in that field. Frozen base amount for those TIF base districts, you're going to enter the 100% frozen base year valuation assigned to the district. And as a reminder, don't increase the amount for this frozen information field for those years when the unneeded increment is diverted to the base value. That shouldn't affect the frozen base, only the budget year base. For increment districts, it's going to ask for the base district code. So basically, it's going to say, okay, which base district is associated with this increment district that you created. It is very important that the associated base district number is correct, that those are tied together correctly. In our online system, when you're creating base and increment districts, you'll create the base and then it will lead you directly into creating the increment, and those numbers should be sequential. Receiving TIF type, for TIF type increment districts, it's basically just indicating who is the TIF authority to be, what is the TIF authority type that's receiving the revenue? Is it a city urban renewal? Is it a county urban renewal, etc.? And the receiving levy authority code, again, for those increment districts, it's the official uh, numerical or numerical plus a letter code for the TIF authority that's receiving the property taxes. So, okay, we know it's a city TIF district, city urban renewal, and then the levy authority code is the code for the city of Des Moines, for example. So data imported into DOM, again, we're going to be reporting data by class. Residential is reported. Just a side note that dwellings that are on residential property have to be classified as residential and listed in the residential field. And residential assessment limitation needs to apply to those. When we talk about ag land and ag buildings, um, ag buildings are really those buildings related to ag. That is not a residential property on ag land. And so on lines 2 and 3, again, this is ag land and buildings, and this is particularly just ag land and ag buildings that are not residences. Commercial and industrial property, pretty straightforward. We do have some reserved lines. You may see some old data that was related to multi-residential class that was eliminated a few years back, so that is turned into a reserved line. Again, there's a few of those, and they're just sort of placeholders in case there's a new class distinction that's added in the future. Railroad values are separately recorded. Just those are values that are submitted to you. So you would be recording those values by tax district on that line. Utilities without gas and electric. So this is not gas and electric value. It's pipelines and things of that nature. And you're going to enter the values for those utilities that are subject to local property tax as indicated to you by Department of Revenue. There were some assessment limitations, as I mentioned with the assessment limitation figures earlier, that were implemented for 2025. If you want more detail regarding that process and those particular assessment limitations on utilities, I have included the guidance from Department of Revenue in their memo. I've included that link here so you can go review it. Again, this is utilities, not gas and electric. So gas and electric value is included on another line, as well as railroads are included, reported separately. There's not a lot of value typically reported here. It's things like interstate railroad bridges, toll bridges, things like that. And most counties don't have value there, or if there is value, it's very limited. Gross value without gas and electric is simply for both 100% and taxable columns, the sums of lines 1 through 10. Military exemptions and homestead exemptions are included on lines 12 and 13. Although they're included in that order just because that's how they were added, please note that there is a specific order required for the actual calculation of those exemptions within your software. Total net valuation, so that's just the gross value less any of those military or homestead exemptions. Line 15 is the gas and electric valuation. So that's the value that's reported to you by Department of Revenue. And you're going to plug those values in. The assessed values are in the 100% column, and there's taxable values in the taxable column. Those aren't the same numbers. They're not subject to an assessment limitation, but just be aware that the taxable and the 100% assessed values will be different figures that are arrived at through different calculations. It is possible for the taxable to be higher than the assessed. And so if you have any questions, you can certainly follow up with those to Department of Revenue specifically. Open spaces land, it's just any value of property acquired by the State Department of Natural Resources under the Open Spaces program. You're going to be reporting the number of homestead credit claims. So just, sort of bear in mind that that's simply a figure. It's not a actual value as far as property value, but it's saying, okay, in that taxing district, we have, 25 homestead claims, etc. So that's the type of value that's actually going to be imported into the Department of Management system as far as the full total valuation file. In order to import that data, you would be going to the left-hand navigation and selecting Import DAT file. You'll go out and choose your file from your desktop or wherever on your machine it may be held. So you go out, you browse to locate the DAT file and select it, and then you upload. And on the import, what you hope to see is a green check mark that basically just says, okay, your file uploaded, it was in the correct format, you didn't have anything weird like negative numbers, etc. So it was imported into the system correctly. Now keep in mind that doesn't mean that you are completely done, or everything's good to go, and you don't need to do anything else. What this is saying is that your values, again, were in the correct format. You still need to go through the process to review the data, maybe make any other additional changes, run reports, etc., before you finally file your value. So if you got this green check mark, though, you do a confirm, and then it's going to just make sure that the data is all updated within the system, and you can go through your checks. Some common errors with the upload are taxing districts that were switched in the local software from rural to urban and vice versa. So if you had a taxing district 123 that for the past 10 years has been a rural district, and in this valuation year you decided to switch it to an urban district, our system is going to say, well, you can't do that. It was always a rural district. That taxing district number was a rural district. You can't just say now that it's an urban district. If you need to create an urban district, you need to assign a new number, create a new taxing district. Also, a taxing district gets switched from TIF base or increment, between base and increment, vice versa, in your software. And again, that's a situation that the system is going to flag. A big one is probably that a taxing district was created or deleted in your software, but you didn't make the same change on the Department of Management system. Keep in mind that the taxing districts that you have that you're uploading need to reflect what's in the Department of Management system. So if you've added added some TIF districts in your local software, but you haven't added them into the DOM system, it's going to flag an error because you need to make those match. So just an example of what an importing error might look like. This is saying, the following taxing district hasn't been set up in the application. So you created this on your own system, but you didn't create it in our system, and we don't see it in there. So you need to go ahead and do that. This is saying that you have taxing districts, again, that changes were made to sort of the flags or the types of taxing district they were compared to what it is in the current year. So you're switching the flags. That's not going to be allowed, and it's not going to let you import your data. And again, this is one where it was ag land, but is it or is it not? Was it last year? It wasn't last year, but this year you're saying it is. Well, that's a mismatch. You can't upload data that would indicate that. So those are just some of the common errors that you might see when you're trying to upload data into our system. Keep in mind that if the data isn't uploading, it basically means there's something that the Department of Management system doesn't like about your file. If you're not sure what it is based on the error message you're getting, certainly send me a quick email. You can even, send me your DAT file, and I can take a look at it, and we'll help you process that error and move past it. If you have any questions, though, certainly feel free to contact me by phone or by email. Thank you.